Much for being here. I'm Amber Athey with The Spectator USA, and great news for everyone who loves sharp commentary and real news. We're running a discount. Use the code CPAC for 10% off your subscription.
Good
Shameless
plug. Good
Thank
plug.
You. Seamless, I know.
Take it.
So thrilled to be joined on stage by Don Jr., Leader McCarthy, Senator Hawley. I think actually every single person on this stage has had direct experience with being censored by big tech social media companies, whether it's shadow banning, demonetization, your accounts being pulled. Don, can you please talk a little bit about just how widespread this issue is? Because I hear on the left all the time, this isn't real. Conservatives aren't actually being censored.
Well, it's not real if you're a leftist because it doesn't happen to them.
Right.
You know, if you're pro-life, if you're pro-2A, if you're pro-religious liberty, and you say any of those things, you've seen it. I was on this issue like 3 years ago because I saw it to me. I had 1 week on Instagram where I had over 100 million impressions. And I look at my new follower account and it was 0. I mean, it's literally not possible. I mean, I've seen it happen where, I've had the gall to challenge incredibly viable news story coverage like the Jussie Smollett incident where I go, I don't know, guys. I don't know. Has anyone asked the question? He's spreading hate speech. Let's cut off the post. So I've just seen it. And what's great and what these guys have done so well, both Josh in the Senate and Kevin in the House, is brought the issue forward for conservatives because many conservatives have not even realized that with our base across the country, this is probably a top 3 issue, but we were so trapped in sort of it's free market. Well, it's not free market. It's not free market because they're getting so many benefits and protection from liability from the federal government that they cannot discriminate the way they have so flagrantly against conservatives and anyone on our side.
True.
Well, and Senator Hawley, why don't you weigh in there? Because you get a lot of flack for a lot of the legislation that you introduce on big tech.
I think that a lot of people, particularly in the old establishment, they don't realize that, first of all, big tech controls so much of the information. I'd just be interested out in the crowd. How many of you have had your posts taken down? You've had your posts censored. Look at all these hands. It's unbelievable. So we've got to get to a place where we say, listen, we want to be treated fairly. Conservatives shouldn't be shut out of the marketplace of ideas. We shouldn't be shut down. Live action should not be taken off of Facebook, censored on Twitter, pro-life voices. We've got to make sure that we get the fair treatment everybody else does. So here, my proposal is really simple. I think it's as simple as this. If Facebook and Twitter and Google, if they are not going to give conservatives the same treatment as liberals, if they're going to discriminate on the basis of political speech, then they shouldn't be getting special deals from government. It's just that simple. They should not be getting special deals from the federal government.
And to your point, is it really a marketplace of ideas at this point? Leader McCarthy, we see a huge monopoly among these big tech companies to the point where they are literally controlling what people see and hear every single day. The left claims that they want to break up the monopolies, but in reality, it seems like a lot of their proposals actually give more power to the big tech companies.
They make them utilities. And the real challenge here, 90% of every search goes through Google. You know what Google did with Wikipedia 2 weeks before the last election in California? If you looked up the Republican Party, it said our ideology was Nazism. Do you see what Twitter is doing? This is where Don has been wonderful, and Holly. We brought in, when we were in the majority, a lot of these CEOs. So I brought in Jack from Twitter, who said there was no shadow banning. You know what he said the day before he had to extend before the committee? Oh yeah, that was a mistake. We did shadow ban. Had you see what recently was leaked by Twitter, what they're going to do next? And they utilized one of my tweets for it. They're going to allow liberal activists to determine whether yours is harmful or not. It's like China's social scoring. So they took an article I put up from the Federalist. They allowed these liberal activists to say this was harmful and wrong. Because you know why? We called out the whistleblower. Somehow that was wrong. And they're letting these socialist ideas be able to control what we're doing. And that's what's wrong. If they control so much of the market, and they say it's just an algorithm, a human writes the algorithm. They control so much of what we're doing. And how many of us remember what happened the day after the election, that big Google meeting where they're all crying, where they tried so hard to defeat the president and it didn't work? Think about, if they will do this to our speech, what are they doing about our privacy? That's more important.
Yeah, privacy is huge. Please
Can I
jump in.
on Kevin's point about Google, let's remember and the left's coziness with these big tech companies. Google basically ran the Obama administration. You know, Facebook gave the Obama administration special deals, gave the Obama campaign special access. So when the left goes out there and says, oh, you know, we don't like big tech, really because you benefited from big tech, you've gotten rich off of big tech, you've gotten special treatment for big tech, and now we don't have a real marketplace because these big tech companies, who are all liberals putting the thumb on the scale against Donald Trump, all of these companies get special deals from government, and that means that there isn't real free competition, and that's the problem.
Well, and it's also beyond social media. So many people talk about that because they're interacting with it so much every day, but you see it with Google and Gmail. Do yourselves a favor. You know, subscribe to the email lists of some of the crazy leftists right now, subscribe to the Trump and some of the conservative side, and check your junk mailbox. See which side is going where. You know, the inboxing where they're literally saying, okay, it's coming from Trump, it's going to your junk mail, you're gonna filter it out, you're not gonna see it. They're doing it there. So the problem is the bias and the censorship is going so much further than just the social media platforms. It's going into your everyday life. And this is what they're going to keep doing. You see it getting worse and worse. And I've been saying this it's a dry run for 2020. How much of that message can we eliminate? How much damage can we do to their ability to fundraise, to give the other side an advantage? We're not asking for favoritism. You know, trust me, I'll take these guys on one-on-one on any of these issues, and we will win. But we're not getting that. And the reality is, with a mainstream media complex, a multi-billion-dollar enterprise that's also decided to be the marketing wing of the far left, it's not an easy hurdle to overcome, even if the facts are entirely on our side.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the media, and I'd like you all to speak to this a bit more, because we now have so-called journalists who are calling for censorship on social media platforms. It's absolutely wild. I've never seen anything like it, where people will claim that a political ad is misinformation because it has a meme in it. I mean, what is going on?
We need more speech, not less. And they're not all the same. Now I'm the first one that brings all these CEOs and criticize all of them, but I'm going to give one person praise. One thing that Zuckerberg has done and the others have attacked, he has said we need free speech. And watch what the liberals are doing and watch how they're going after him. Why? Because Donald Trump was able to use Facebook better than the Democrats, and he got the message to all of us for us to collectively go. So we need to, when someone does something right, stand up for them. But what's more importantly, when you think of your privacy, what they're able to do, we should think of this like private property. If they're going to make money off what they know about us, we should get a piece of that. We should be able to delete it, and we should be able to move it to a different platform if we want to. Our knowledge is about us, is ours. And that's what we need to protect, because they're utilizing this to change an outcome of an election and censor us based upon what we say if they disagree with us. And they use the liberal media as their standpoint to say what we're doing is wrong. What if we allowed CNN to tell us on TV what is right and what is wrong, when 95% of everything they say goes against the conservatives?
It's a banana, not an apple.
Well, to your point, though, the one thing I do like to give credit where credit is due, but the problem with the Zuckerberg argument is they have, let's call it 100,000 employees that don't agree with that.
Yes.
You know, so the problem is this: it's not just the leader at the top. The inmates are actually running the asylum. There's someone in there. No, that's what's going on. He's not looking at algorithms. He's not, typing code at this point. He's running the SIP. So even if he agrees, if those 25,000 people below him in charge disagree, guess what? They're going to do what they want. And one little character in there, one little subtle manipulation can mean so much that there has to be actual, guidance from the top to make sure that isn't happening. And while he may believe it, I don't know that it's actually translating down to the lower levels of employment.
This reminds me, Don, so Mark Zuckerberg has been on the Capitol Hill, and he does these tours, and he came to see me. I said, sure, I'll sit down with you. He came to see me, and he said to me, we were talking about Live Action, the pro-life group, who Facebook had prevented from distributing their videos. And I said to him, you discriminated against Live Action. You treated them wrongly. He admitted to me, he said, you know what, Josh? There was bias in that case. And then he also said to me, he goes, I know that this might be hard to believe, but we do have a bias problem at Facebook. I said, hard for whom to believe? Hard for you to believe. All of us know that.
That's so hard for me.
All of us know that. And here's the thing about the liberals. What the liberals want to do is they want to get big tech. When we are in power, when Donald Trump is in the White House, They want to bully big tech into censoring us. When they're in power, when the liberals are in power, they know that big tech will on their own suppress our voices. So it's all about, for the left, it's all about this partnership. It's a big government, big tech partnership run by the liberals. That's what they want, and that's why we've got to open this thing up. We've got to get more competition in there. We've got to get more companies in there. We've got to get more options in there, and we've got to protect our speech.
And I want to follow up on that because people talk about jumping into the marketplace of social media companies, but obviously it's very difficult with how much power places like Facebook, Google, Twitter have right now. How are we supposed to open up a space for companies like, I don't know, Gab or some of these other smaller startup companies to actually have a chance at having people like the ones in this room jump to their platforms?
Well, you got to end the special favors that big tech gets. Big tech has gotten big and powerful and strong because of the special deal that they get from the federal government. Again, let's not pretend like this has just been free market competition. Big tech has allied with big government. So here's what we should do. We should say to Facebook and Google and these others, your property, your data is yours. It's what Kevin just said. Your personal information is yours. You ought to be able to take it anywhere. To Don's point about Gmail, you ought to be able to take all of your emails to another service that you want without losing, without being penalized. Big tech hates that. They don't want to do that. They want to control your property, not give you any control over it. We need to give consumers, individuals, control over their own information, their own data, and allow you to take it and do with it what you want.
Exactly.
I want to hit on a point that was brought up earlier, which is there are all these mistakes that are made when it comes to censorship. And I used to cover this quite a bit, and I would email Twitter and Facebook, and their PR person would inevitably get back and say, oh, well, you know, it was just a human error.
Yeah.
How do they get away with that?
Well, I don't know, and it's interesting. It happened to me again. I brought up a couple of the posts that I deleted because I took a controversial stance, not because it was controversial. It was only controversial because the mainstream media and Hollywood got on one side of an argument. Jussie Smollett, where I go, has anyone thought that maybe this fact set is asinine? Has anyone, I just asked the question, and I got, well, it was an error, we're sorry. I go, well, we'd like to talk to you about it. I go, okay, let's talk about it, but let's do it in a public forum. Crickets. They were willing to talk to me, they were willing to sit there and tell me what I wanted to hear, but they wouldn't do it in a public forum because they knew that there was literally nothing, and I know nothing about coding, it's not my thing, I build buildings, but I could have whatever conversation I want, and they wouldn't be able to give me a real answer because they're actually doing it, and they're okay with that. So they were fine to have the conversation, to yes me to death, to make it appear as though they're being open and honest about what's actually going on, but there is zero transparency there. No one sees what's actually happening.
And this is what we're finding. If you are a conservative and you work in one of these companies, you have to maintain quiet. Even in some of these companies, conservatives got together and created a group because they were fearful that they would be thrown out just by their own political views. So if everybody else in the company has these other views, that's where they go in, put their thumb on the scale, quiet you down. And if you don't speak up, think about if they're doing it to us, who speaks for you? That's why you got to have a level playing field. You got to open this up, and it goes back to our privacy. Yeah. Do you want Google to know everywhere you search? Do they really put it away? Yeah. Do you think Siri only listens to you when you ask her?
Yeah. How many times has it chimed in on a conversation where you weren't asking it to chime in? But your point is...
That's how they make... Anything on the internet that is free, you are not the customer, you are the client because they're utilizing your data and selling it. Why? If they're going to sell our data, I should have a say in it. If it's my information, I should have a say. I either get a piece of it, and you know what? Have you ever tried to delete yourself from any of these sites? I should be able to delete it, and I should be able to move it. If we do that, we would open it up to new competition, and you know what? Someone might care about who we are and cater to us.
Well, and your point, I think, is a really important one, because what you said was, if they can do it to us, who can't they do it to? Right? I mean, I've done that. I did a big example where I literally searched my handle a couple months ago on Instagram. Now, I happened to share the name of the President of the United States. And neither of us showed up in the first, 100 people. I put up the video on Instagram. Immediately then, 3 hours later, all of a sudden, people are like, no, it's fine now. I go, yeah, it's fine now. But it wasn't when I did it, when I sent it to my friend to be like, hey, are you getting the same thing? So if I search my name or my father's name on my hand, and I follow these people,
Weren't
and
you
it still
dangerous?
doesn't show up.
Did it come out that you were dangerous?
I was a threat to society.
Yes.
I mean, But if they're doing it to me with a couple million followers, if they're doing it to the president of the United States with 15 million followers, what are they doing to your account with 300?
Exactly.
How much worse, how much more damage can they do to you and your ability to do it? And I've seen that from my friends in some of that world where they're like, well, we paid for ads, but because we're religious, or because we're Second Amendment, or because we're this, we actually, once we became paid on this platform, we actually lost numbers.
Yeah.
I mean, let's stop pretending that this isn't a real thing happening, guys.
I just want to put a fine point on what I think we have the right to demand from these big tech companies, and that is you ought to be able to say, I want all of my personal information back from Facebook or Google or whomever. And by the way, for your kids also. I've got 2 little boys at home. Yeah. My wife and I, we think about every day, what are these tech companies? If my kids have toys that connect to the internet, or they watch something on TV, or they download a program on a tablet, you don't think that Google and Facebook are keeping track of them? I want the right as a parent. And you deserve the right to say, I want my kids' data back. I want it deleted. I want to control it. I want to raise my own kids, not big tech. And to Don's point, my view is simple on this. Listen, if we get discriminated against, if you get suppressed on Twitter or Facebook, if Don gets suppressed on Twitter or Facebook, any of us, we ought to be able to sue them. I mean, we ought to be able to say, we have rights here. We ought to be able to say, why are you doing that? Those are rights we should expect to have.
Let's talk a bit about China, because we've seen how the coronavirus has an impact on our medical supply chain. But a lot of people don't know that there's a really cozy relationship between China and these big tech companies. I mean, you have Google running behind America's back, working on a search engine with communist China. It's unbelievable.
And they'll give them whatever it is that they want.
Right, we'll censor whatever you want.
We will do that because we'll take the money. And that's the reality. I mean, that's what's going on. I mean, besides this, all the issues with coronavirus and everything like that right now, I mean, in many cases, Trump's platform's been right about trade, about controlling supply chain, about immigration, about borders because of everything that's going on. But China and the fact that big tech is more comfortable working with China to allow them in a dictatorial regime, essentially, to do whatever it is that they want with this data. But in America, they won't give people who want to express their religious freedoms that same platform is truly scary. I mean, that dichotomy there is almost asinine.
Remember when Google started, they had this motto. What was it? Don't do evil or don't be evil. Did you realize they took that away a couple years ago?
Well, Kevin, a few $1 billion will do that. Evil to a point. Once you put a B in front of it, maybe we will loosen our standards a little bit.
But what they are doing with China, do you know in China, if you are a citizen of China and you want to buy an airline ticket or a train ticket, you could have the money, you could go to the stand, and what they say is, oh, let's first look at your social score. Everybody has a social score. It's what you said and what government thinks is right or wrong. That's what they're trading everybody else. That's what they're trying to do on the Twitter to us now, on what we say, whether it's right or wrong, and they're letting the liberals decide it. But more importantly, Google is now working with the Chinese government. And I think Google now does not view themselves as an American company. They think they're a company of the world.
I think that this partnership with China that we see so many of the big tech companies trying to pursue, and Google is really the worst offender, it really speaks to the fact that at heart, these companies have a strong authoritarian streak. I mean, they want to control our speech in this country. They want to control what we say and what we don't say. So, China, that's their whole point of view, and that's what they want to do. It's a natural fit. And that's why we have got to stand up and say, that's not going to happen in this country. We're not going to be told what we can and cannot say online, or anywhere for that matter. We're not going to be told what our views can and cannot be. And I think that one of the things that the president has done just fantastically is stand up and call this out and say, you know what? No, I'm not going to play along by the usual PC rules. I'm going to call out discrimination when I see it. I'm going to call out the double standards when I see it. And we've got to do that with these tech companies.
And look, we talk a lot about politics on this panel. We're all relatively political people, you could say. But this is beyond politics. It's beyond the political world. This is a cultural, societal issue as well.
I think without question, I mean, and that politics is downstream of culture, right? And so when you see that sort of aspect of culture where they're trying to dictate it, again, the manipulation of that culture, because again, the average person on this stage is going to be different than the average person in America who's consuming 5 or 10 minutes of news a day. We live this stuff. You do it all day for work. These days,
you do it more than us.
I do it more than anyone probably, but only because I take it so personally and I see what's actually going on. There's so few voices on our side, even if they want to be vocal about it, they can't even get there because of the suppression.
Yeah, they're shut down before they can even get the word out. It just seems like this is about families and children. I mean, the privacy issue especially in terms of how they have your children's data, it's unbelievable.
Well, this, again, this goes back to, I take the view that parents ought to be able to raise their kids, not big tech. I mean, maybe that seems strange. I don't know, it seems strange to the liberals, I guess, but as a father of small children, it just is so important that we give families, that we give individuals control over their own information, that you get to decide what your kids see, you get to decide who has your kids' information, and again, you get to decide how you speak and who hears what you speak, and I think that's just a bedrock American principle.
Well, meanwhile, we were being live streamed on Twitter if they didn't pull it down yet.
You know what you do? All right, if you go to
Anyone taking odds?
if you go to GOP leader at Twitter, I'm going to put a poll up there about the most important things that we're concerned about in here. Go on there, vote, and we'll let Twitter know that we have a concern about what they're doing.
I like that.
Awesome.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Time's up. Thank you all.
Done.
Thank you, guys.
The deep state is a sort of political circumstance or condition in Washington, D.C., where the professional political class, those persons who are career employees of the various agencies and departments, have really become their own sort of fourth branch of government. There's been an incremental increase in the number of folks from the political left who are quite happy in those positions and operating those systems and programs, and that's how you see what today we call the deep state. Everyone's familiar with the executive, the judiciary, and the legislative branch of government. But there are career employees, folks who man the headquarters elements of each of the departments and agencies, who are here for decades. They're a professional elite that really have their hands on the levers of government day in and day out. And they actually control many of the functions that people think of when they think of government service. They're really not terribly interested in answering you or answering members of Congress or members of the media, because they have their own objectives and their own timeline, and they don't wish to be disturbed or exposed in any way. Well, that's where Judicial Watch comes in. Through our investigations and our lawsuits, we uncover information. We're in a constitutional republic, and what our Constitution guarantees is that we, the people, are sovereign over our government. The public, the people, are owed service by the